great writer named Gene Freeze, who says that just getting into the stunt business is worth noting, and thriving in the stunt business is worth major attention, and surviving is a miracle. Doing stunts on a motion picture is like being in an alley fight, inside a nightmare, and a dark, unknown planet. Your mind can't wander for a second. In Richard Rush's masterpiece, The Stuntman, Chuck Bale's character, the stunt coordinator, is high on a hotel roof talking with a new kid who's about to slide off the roof while not listening to directions. Kid, you'd better not be thinking about snatch. You'd better be thinking about grabbing hold of that rain gutter and hanging on, or you're going to be a dead man. Stunts are the only skills on a movie set that can, and frequently do, result in injury or death. It is, by the way, to me, unconscionable that the Motion Picture Academy gives awards for makeup, hairdressing, music, editing, etc., but over 40 years they have ignored stunt performers and stunt coordinators. Some of the stunt men and women who have been killed or seriously injured just since I've been in the business, just so you know what goes on. A.J. Bakunis, working the film Steel, tried to break the high fall record from a chopper, fell 300 feet. The airbag ripped open at the seams when he hit. He went completely through it, splattering himself on the concrete. His dad was standing with the crew watching the stunt. Sonia Davis, working Eddie Murphy's Vampire in Brooklyn, overshot her pad, went head first into a concrete wall, crushed her skull. Jack Tyree, doing stunts on The Sword and the Sorcerer in Hollywood's Branson Canyon, did a fall off a cliff, missed his airbag, ending his promising career and his life. Paul Dallas died when he missed his bag in a 53-foot high fall for the TV show L.A. Heat. Jay Curran was killed in a cliff jump on a low-budget picture called Bikini Island. The list goes on and on. Harvey Perry, stuntman on The Hazards of the Game, said a good stuntman has to have his mind, or stuntwoman, should have their mind about 14 feet ahead of their body. That's the only way to stay alive. The list goes on and on. Please remember, we're talking about the making of movies here. It's just all make-believe, right? Then I've got to mention the king of Hollywood stuntmen, Dar Robinson, who was killed in a simple motorcycle gag. Reed Rondell, member of the revered stunt clan of Rondells, was killed in a chopper crash on an episode of Airwolf. Corey Scott met his maker on another motorcycle gag on a flick in Miami. Vic Rivers bought it. When a car stunt went bad, he took a pickup off a pier at Lake Casitas, only someone forgot to weigh down the back end of the pickup. All of the weight, of course, was up front with the engine, where the engine is. Instead of pancaking out into the lake, as he was meant to do, it went nose down, head first, straight into 20 feet of mud and silt. Poor Vic drowned in front of his wife and his son, who were on the set to watch Dad do his stunt. Vic Bagnata drove a car into a river for the film Shark. The windshield collapsed. Vic was trapped inside and drowned before anyone could reach him. Jim Shepard was dragged to death behind a horse. Bob Morgan, husband of Yvonne DiCarlo, lost a leg in a massive log spill on How the West Was Won. Seasoned pro Roy Sickner was turned into a veritable vegetable when a Jeep he was jumping flipped on him, landing directly on his body at the end of the gag. Stuntman Hank Kalia was permanently injured on Jesse's Girls when the effects man poured out too much smoke around the tower Hank was falling from. The smoke obscured his fall pad. Hank hit it half on and half off, breaking just about everything in his lower body. Bad luck? Janet Orcutt was permanently paralyzed on the series Stuntmasters. Everyone's favorite stunt woman, Heidi Van Belts, was paralyzed from the neck down on the Burt Reynolds film Hooper. William Bonner, paralyzed also during a car mishap in a low-budget moonshine movie innocently titled Marianne. Paul Mance, Art Scholl, Frank Clark are just a few who bought it while flying stunts in airplanes. Gary Beale, an excellent carman, was working a show in Missouri. A new stunt performer, a motorcycle jumper, came on the show to do a ramp-to-ramp. It had been raining. The ground in front of the takeoff ramp was slippery and dangerous, like an Arizona Diamondback. Gary didn't like the look of things, and he told the kid to postpone the jump. Well, that kid was going to do it anyway. As Gary was walking under the ramp to secure some struts, he heard the bike climbing for the takeoff. It sounded strange to me, Gary said. like he had lost power or he was throttled down. Next thing I heard was the screaming of the crowd. The bike had started to jump all right, but just as Gary thought, it was underpowered. He hit the steel sheeting under the landing ramp. He was cut in half. When they got to him, his lower torso and legs were still strapped on the bike. Bud Cardos and I, we were doing horse work on a flick called Red River Johnny. We were inside a barn, mounted, waiting for some dynamite to go off and explode a wall off the barn. We would then ride through the wreckage, get shot off our horses by a waiting posse and fall to the ground, seemingly dead. Well, the horses were already spooked. They could smell the blasting powder, and they were jumpy as spit on a hot skillet. I noticed a young stuntman behind me. He was so frightened he was shaking in his boots, nervous and unsure, which is never a good sign. Just as I was about to say something, boom, off went the dynamite. A full charge. The barn literally disintegrated. Those horses took off faster than a cheetah. I picked my fall spot, was halfway into it when I heard Cardos yell. I hit the ground, rolled over, and glanced backward. The young kid I'd seen shivering in the barn, he did his saddle fall all right, but he had his foot caught in the stirrup. The horse bounced his body off every fence post within an acre and a half. By the time Bud and I got to him and grabbed the reins, his clothes and skin had been ripped from his body. Every bone was broken. As the ambulance took him away, both Bud and I started praying silently. We were just two stuntmen trying to bargain with that old wrangler in the sky. We followed the wail of the siren to the hospital. When we arrived, the kid was already in critical care. The coroner rumor was that he would probably be at least partially paralyzed for life. I felt lower than a gopher's gonads. Come on, Kent, Bud said softly. It's cocktail time for you and me. Later, we learned the kid had recovered enough to work his way into film editing, something he could do safely, seated in a quiet room. Ever since movies began, with the early westerns, it's been the stunt doubles, the hard riders, the men and women born to the saddle and tough as Toad Harry's tongue, who've provided the action and the real thrills. Without their courage, there would have been no heart-stopping horse falls, no saddle falls, no flaming wagons plunging off cliffs, no lightning-fast getaways by the outlaws. The leaders, the guys who set the bar for the daredevils that followed, were a rodeo cowboy from my home state of Washington, Yakima Canutt, and a former acrobat named David Sharp. David Sharp probably appeared in more movies than any other person in the film business. An acrobatic champion in his teens, he was wooed by the studios and over the next 7 decades did stunts, directed and acted in over 4,000 motion pictures. Davey doubled Tony Curtis, Marlon Brando, Tyrone Power, Alan Ladd, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Sr. In 1980 was inducted into the Stuntman's Hall of Fame. My good friend, Bob Ivy, was lucky enough to meet David Sharp when Sharp was in his final resting years at the Motion Picture Home in Woodland Hills, California. Bob was just a kid with dreams of someday being a stuntman himself. He made a special trip to the home, taking a chance on meeting up with his boyhood hero. Sharp was sitting in a chair outside of his room. In the last stages of battling Lou Gehrig's disease, he was delighted that someone remembered his exploits and took the trouble to stop by and meet him. For Bob Ivy, it was the highlight of his life. For me, within the clouds of dust, the grease and grit, within the rolling tumult and danger of the stunt people, men and women, I found tremendous courage, but also beauty, caring, and in the end, an artful synchronicity of mind and body and spirit that is almost holy. Sadly, stunt work and the gritty folks who perform it are fast becoming part of a lost art. Computer graphic imaging, CGI, and its practitioners are replacing forever a very special breed of man and woman with just a blue screen and some clever camera angles. That's it. Thank you.